So now that I've fleshed out my front view, I'm going to move on to my side view and then start reflecting things up to my top view as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a center line down my side view, just so I can reflect things over the center line. And this is 12 inches wide, so I'm just going to put a tick mark right at 6 inches. And I'm just going to do a very light line down the center because it's just a reference line. It's not actually a line that you would visually see on the tool tote. Now I have to kind of decide where I want this facet to happen. I want it to be above my side pieces because I just want to be able to slide my side pieces into a straight mortise or a straight rabbet joint. So I definitely want it higher than my side pieces. Probably not too much higher though. Maybe we'll see 3/4 of an inch just to sort of continue that pattern. So I'm just going to mark 3/4 of an inch above those side pieces and then reflect it over. Make 2 dash points here and here. And then on this drawing I did have a slight arch in the top as well. I think that one could be a constant radius. So I'm just going to keep the radius it's already set at and place my pivot point on my center line here just to see what that looks like. Now I should be able to place my tenon too. Both of my tenons are going to be hidden lines because they're going to be capped by these decorative pieces here. So I'll start with my larger tenon. And I haven't decided on a thickness for my tenon, or for that matter for my handle either. So that's something I should decide now. I want to be able to have enough bulk to my handle that I can sculpt it. And I also just want it thick enough that it doesn't lose any strength. I'm going to keep going with 3/4 of an inch just because it's been working well for me. And this is always something that I could adjust later on if I think it looks too thin proportionally. And then I also need to draw what this decorative cap looks like from the side, how thick it is, what its profile looks like. And I'm thinking it will probably be rounded a bit on both edges. Possibly even just an oval shape. So I'm going to have 2 profiles to indicate my decorative cap. One is going to be the profile where it immediately comes out of the side piece, and one is going to be the end profile. So the end profile will be with a solid line, and then the side piece will partially, or where it's emerging from the side, will partially be a hidden line, but up here, where there's an unobstructed view this way, it will be a solid line. It's a little bit confusing. So I'll start with my solid line first, since that'll be the easiest. And if this is oval in profile, looking at it from this direction, it'll actually look pretty circular. This might not be the most accurate depiction of these end caps here, but ultimately it's also going to be the least informative viewpoint of these end caps, so I'm not too worried. I think the main thing that's critical is the placement of these mortises here. So now I know exactly how to lay out my side piece. And typically the way I lay out my dovetails is I use the dimension of my narrowest chisel, which is going to be 1/4 of an inch, as the pins. So this may take a couple tries to get it laid out in a way that I like it. But let's start out with something simple and just have a 2-inch wide tail in the center. And then it's pretty typical with dovetails to leave a half pin on either side. In this case, because I'm going to have a rabbet here to capture these side panels here, I'm actually going to leave my dovetails a little tucked in this design because I don't want them to interfere with the strength of that rabbet joint. So here is where I want my cut to stop because I don't want the cut to show beyond those side panels. And that can either be done doing a stop cut on the table saw, which involves running your board over the table saw until a certain length and then holding it in place until the table saw powers off completely. Or you can do a stop cut even easier using the router, both of which we'll go over more in the semester. But it's pretty standard to have it 1 inch in, or sorry, 1/4 inch in and 1/4 inch wide. And because I do have 3/4 inch sides, I think I'm going to instead do 3/8 in and 3/8 wide. And finally I can add a dashed line for my bottom board. And again, this just indicates that I'm not able to see the board, but that it is intersecting with this side here. So it should be able to reflect over to the top. So first thing I'm going to do is reflect those side panels. Next, I should put the handle. First, I'm going to put those tenons because the tenons are rectilinear, so they're a lot easier to draw. So I'm going to reflect those up over my 45-degree line. Make a little crosshatch just to indicate that I've referenced that line. Now I'm going to reflect the thickness of my handle. You can see this is where it starts to come in handy that you've added these cross marks, because once there's enough of them, it can start to get really confusing. So as the design is right now, I have sort of a gradual taper going on. I'm not sure if I should keep that or if I should have a consistent thickness. I think that's something that I'm going to have to drop back down into sketches to really work out for sure, and see what feels right. Because I'll be wasting too much time if I'm figuring it out in the drawing stage. Okay, now I should also be able to transfer the bottom of my tote. And you can see it doesn't quite reach the 45-degree line, so I'll just have to make a dash mark here and then continue it up. And this will be a solid line since the bottom will be visible. Additionally, I could draw hidden lines for my dovetails from the top, but again, it's not going to be all that functional to show what the dovetails look like from the side. It's much more informative to show what the dovetails look like from the front.